Okay. All right. All right. Welcome, everyone. We are in the midst of a very good conversation. My friend Brenda just brought up that, there is the message that we talk about love God, love your neighbor. Most people would say, yeah, of course, I get that. But what do you do with everything else? Because that sort of has been a banner waved by those who don't want to be observant of anything else. Maybe they don't keep Shabbat. Maybe they eat unclean things. But one of the things that I want to stress that I'm feeling now, because I took a very hard position on this for many years, where I would challenge people and I would say, you say you love God and love your neighbor, but you don't keep the Torah. So how could you possibly, you're out of line with this. But then I think about this. For me, where it started was I said, I just love the Lord. And I'd read my Bible and I'd learn some things and I wonder if I should do no, this is, I'm saved by grace and not by works. I wrestled with all of those things internally until I reached a place where I said, hold on just a second. I'm supposed to be demonstrating my love by doing these things. And so now the only thing that I would ask is that all of us remember, think back. It's for some of us, it's been a while, but think back to when we had this very pure, simple, uninformed idea of faith apart from works, right? To quote Todd's buddy Paul, it's this idea that we've grown in faith, but to your point, Brenda, I think that there's action that's involved, and I hope that some of that came out in the class. Now, please, before I go to the next person, jump in because you can probably articulate and say more on this question if you want. I'm open to hear it. I give you just a second, Brenda, if you want to unmute and come back on.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was having problems with
That's
the
okay.
mute button. Yes, thank you so much for that, Ross. Yeah, I love the message of condensing the 10 words to, uh, and just similarly as Yeshua did, love God, love your neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
as being very powerful. But just on a personal note, I feel that when I first came to Torah, observing Shabbat was, and the festivals, but more so Shabbat, what was really what anchored me to Torah and deepened
Yeah.
my faith. And I do agree, it is very important to act out, love God, love your neighbor, to live that day in and day out. But I really just hope that the message of observing Torah doesn't observing Shabbat does
Yeah.
not fall off, because it's critical, it's important, it's what really grounds us directly to Jehovah.
Yeah.
It did for me and for my family. So I'm all for the message. I love it, but I hope that as we grow deeper in faith and in our love for Jehovah, that we also come to observe Shabbat.
I agree.
It's what unites us all as well.
I agree. And so we're aligned and so there is a happy medium between saying, look, it really boils down to love God, love your neighbor, and everybody nods, but then we need to make sure that we don't leave the other things undone, right? As you point out, because Sabbath and I think if we did a poll, one of the things that would show up almost without exception, if you said, hey, what was the first thing that God began to show you? If we can word it that way, what was the first thing that pulled you deeper into a relationship with the Creator? And I think almost without exception, we're going to hear what you just said. We're going to see observance of the festivals. We're going to see dietary things, changes, probably recognizing a name of God, and those there are a lot of different arguments on that. But the calendar, the holy sacred days, is certainly one of the big ones, and that, by the way, is coming up in next week's Torah portion. So Looking forward to
Fantastic.
that.
Thank you
Good
so much,
stuff.
Ross.
Hey, thanks, and congratulations on the baby, and my prayers with your whole family, and I'm happy for you.
Thank you. God bless you, Ross.
God
Thank
bless
you.
you. All right. Clody, how are you, my friend? Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. I hope you can hear me. Can you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. I can.
Perfect. Thank you for the class. This is really a very general. Can you see me?
I
Yeah.
can see you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So this was a really love is a really general concept, and we can stay for weeks and for months talking about love. And I just want to note only 2 points. One of those was I caught it on your speech, and it was, can love be taught? Can love be commanded? I think that is very important. And according to my experience, and I really have some memories that I shouldn't have had them because they are very early memories. I remember my grandmother teaching me how to love. Why is that? When some other child was in our home or we were in a common space and they took my toys, I wanted to grab them back, and I was even a little bit violent with them,
Right.
especially if they were small, right? And my grandmother was like, "No, this happened first with my sister." No, she told me, she's your sister. We love her. Jan Jan. Jan Jan, we say in Albanian, you can pat her. You love her. She's your soul, your spirit. And I patted her, and then she told me, please hug her. And then I hugged my sister, and that's surrendering. That's surrender. And that happened also. That so from that point on, I understood that I love my sister, and I share things with my sister.
Yeah.
She's family. And then I learned it with my cousin, the second step. And the third step, I learned it with my neighbors.
Right.
So if, and kudos to all the parents. I don't know how you do it. I really don't know how you do it, because I believe that children are a little bit egoistical. They want things for themselves. They may be empaths, and they can cry when somebody else cries, or they can laugh when somebody else laughs. But for at least for the object, they are really egoistical.
Yeah.
And my kudos, I really chapeau to all the parents here, everywhere. And I think that if we widen a little bit more the circle and we say that is your neighbor too, and that is your neighbor too, and that is your neighbor too, then the world could be a better place.
Yeah.
Just like in the United States of America, that I have Mexican neighbors, I have Indian American neighbors, I have Israeli neighbors, uh, African American neighbors,
Yeah.
all over the place. So I think that can be taught. That was the first point that I actually grabbed it from you, and thank you.
Gotcha.
And the second one, I was reading to the comments as the class was going on, and I saw that many of the people had problems with the biggest problem. Yeah, I have some neighbors. I don't know if you can hear them.
That's okay.
So,
you better love those neighbors. Tell them to shut up
I
so
love
you
the
can
neighbors.
talk.
Exactly. There you go. So what happens? Just give me a moment. I'm gonna have to move.
Okay.
Sorry. This is funny. Okay. So the second point was how can we stop holding grudges to our dearest one?
Yep.
I think that the stronger we love, the stronger we feel that we have right to the person that we love. We may become a little bit possessive,
Yeah.
and we think that the other person should know that we love them and should love us back. And that especially happens inside the family. What we do is the worst amount of violence or a little bit of possessiveness we exercise this to our family. We become needy and we become a little bit aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we resolve that? And then I thought of Freud and of how bad we were taught from him to hold grudges to our father,
Yeah.
because all our trauma is from our parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that one of the big things that we should learn in our time is how to forgive our parents and how to forgive those that weren't good neighbors with us.
Yeah.
So if they weren't good neighbors with us, let let us begin.
Look, that let me say one thing about when you started off talking about your grandmother and how she taught you progressively how to love. And one thing that I think is interesting as you were talking is I thought of the way that Leviticus 19, verse 17 and 18 build from narrow to broader. So you have don't hate your brother or your sister or your cousin in your heart, someone really, really close of kin. You shall rebuke your kinsman is the next word, and don't take vengeance or bear grudge against the children of. Notice it gets wider, and then
Mhm.
neighbor is the fourth term that's used. So I think that there may be something on that. And one thing that I wanted to add is, the rabbis came up with some really interesting discussions on this topic. And I'm going to read, if I can, Clody, and feel free to jump back in and comment. This is one of the books in my library. It's a rabbi friend of mine sent it to me. It's Jacob Milgram on Leviticus. And Milgram is, I mean, he's the guy on the planet for Leviticus. He spent his entire career working in Leviticus. He's written the 3-volume Anchor Bible set. So here's something he's quoting. He says, the rabbis distinguish between two concepts. You shall not take vengeance. What is the extent of vengeance? One says to another, lend me your sickle, and the other refuses. On the morrow, the latter says, lend me your axe, and the former replies, I shall not lend it to you, since you did not lend me your sickle. Hence, it's written, you shall not take vengeance. So it defines vengeance. The guy says, hey, let me borrow that. And you say no. The next morning he needs something. And you say no, because you wouldn't do that. Well, you're taking vengeance. Now, here's the next part. You shall not nurse a grudge. What's the extent of nursing a grudge? One says to the other, hey, lend me your sickle. And the former replies, here, take it. I'm not like you who didn't lend me your axe. Such behavior is condemned by you shall not bear a grudge. Now, I'm not an expert in rabbinic literature, but when I read that, I sort of chuckled. I said, those are good examples of vengeance and bearing a grudge. And I could imagine one person telling another, yeah, sure, here, you can borrow mine because I'm not a jerk like you. You wouldn't lend me your stuff, but here, go ahead, take it because I'm a good person. And that's not love either. So I think, and this goes back to Brenda's point, there is the idea, just love your neighbor, but there's a way that you love your neighbor. It's not just in word, It's how do you demonstrate that and do it the right way? I think that's as important as anything. What
Well,
else? What else, Clody?
I would say that a small story in Israel. When I went to Israel, my first and last time until now, I went to Jericho, and they told me that to go to Jericho, you need to have the Israelis are not allowed there. So I was very happy that I have an Albanian passport. So we got there, and a guy told me that God's name is not Yehovah, as Yehovah, the one who was, is, and will be, but God's name is Ahava, and that means love. And that was the first time that I encountered that. And I think that should make us think.
I've heard that, and there's actually there are a couple of interesting academic articles which put that forward, and a lot of times they'll associate the root word, more towards the idea of ahav, and but yes, in fact, maybe I'll find those articles and post them because they're interesting, from an academic perspective.
It was a little bit curious how we go from Ehia, Asher Ehia to Yehovah,
Mm-hmm.
and how we go from Ahav to Yehovah.
Yeah.
So if I don't have a good academic explanation, which I don't because I don't speak Hebrew,
Yeah.
I think those two are plausible. That would be all. Thank you.
Good stuff. Hey, good to see you. Go tell those neighbors don't ever interrupt again while you're trying to. I'm joking. All right. Thanks, Clody. Michael Douglas, welcome. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom and good morning.
Good
It
morning.
is morning here.
Yeah, good
really,
morning.
Very, very much morning here. This is a wonderful subject, and I'm so glad, that I'm able to listen and join this group every week. It's one of the highlights, if not the highlight. Well, the center, of the week is Sabbath meeting, I think, because this is a place where we can practically experience loving our neighbor as ourselves, or at least have that beginning, that connection with people who are focused on something that has meaning, and so thank you for facilitating this group, and I'm so glad that
Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, and everyone is here, and this is a loaded subject. I mean, I don't know how long this is going to go on today, but it's like you said, it's a feel good thing, and I just, from what I've heard so far, and what I moved to respond to is, as Brenda and Cody and what you had in your class, about how love is something that's, you can look it up in a dictionary or have an idea of what it looks like and try to act it out. But can you legislate? Can you make a law that says you have to love? It doesn't really have a meaning if we don't know how to get in touch with that real love, because we can act. We can pretend, we can put on a show and try to look good in front of our neighbors,
Yeah.
But when it comes right down to the basic of it, that this is something beautiful that I just wanted to bring in because it didn't get hasn't been mentioned yet. But I loved the letter of James, in the New Testament, and he brings out a point that's really so beautiful, and it often gets overlooked, because he points right to this particular instruction, and he calls it the royal law.
Yeah.
Right. And I haven't seen a lot of people that really, are addressing this. But what is the royal law? And he says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If you really fulfill that royal law, according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And this is in James chapter 2, verse 8 to 13, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and he says, great, you're doing very well. If you truly, really fulfill this law, you're doing well. But if you show partiality,
Mm-hmm.
and that would have to deal with Shabbat and all the other instructions, the directions that we've been given by God, that are like signs on the road that point us in the direction, not that we just should go, but if we want to get to where we want to be, we
Yeah.
have to pay attention to those little signs, because to continue, he says, whoever keeps the whole Torah but fails in even one point has become guilty of all of it or is not guiltless. Because the one who said don't commit adultery also said don't murder. And if you do not commit adultery, but you do murder, you have become a transgressor of the direction of God, the mitzvah of God, the law. So, and this is, to me, I love this point, because he brings in another thing that he's already brought in, the law of liberty, the royal law and the law of liberty. And he said, so speak and so act as those who are to be judged under the law of liberty. And so what is the law of liberty?
Yeah.
This is the clue. The royal law is to love your neighbor as yourself, but the law of liberty is the most important instruction of all, which is we have to in the way that actually pleases God, which means with understanding and with our attention, with our full attention, our whole heart, our whole mind, and all of our strength, is to love that creator, his name, that creator, the name of the creator, and to put our entire attention on that love. And then it's not like a law. It's like we're enabled to love our neighbor as ourselves when we know who we are in relation to our creator, and so he concludes this. He says, so speak and act like those who are going to be judged under the law of liberty. Because judgment is without mercy to one who has shown no compassion. Compassion triumphs over judgment. And then he concludes this whole letter. He says, if anyone among you, because I think this is really beautiful too in the Gospels, part of the Torah or the Bible, is that Yeshua he nails it on the head. He says you must love one another, and so people will know that you're my disciples because you love one another. And so he says, and you must love them in the way that I have loved you. In other words, it's great to bake a birthday cake or to give a little kid a piece of candy, but it isn't good for them necessarily,
Yeah.
in terms of dietary instructions, the cakes to the Queen of Heaven and whatever else, you want to bring into it, but it isn't good for their body. And so what kills the body also kills the soul. And what kills the soul, the body's without a spirit is dead. It's nothing. So he concludes his letter. He says, "If anyone among you wanders from the truth, or the way that leads to life, if any of us is not on that path of life, anyone you see." And not to preach to them like, oh yeah, I'm better than you, or I know it all, but with love and compassion, to bring them back, to help them, to experience what they really want to experience. And that's loving the neighbor as herself. Is that? It's not like, well, I know it all and I'm better than
Yeah.
you and you better listen to me. I'm your teacher.
Be a good
Not at
neighbor.
all. Yes, but to lift up your neighbor.
Yeah.
If you have sight, if you can see, if you really can feel, that wonderful, beautiful message that is life, that is not just it's not an emotion, but or a feeling, but it's the ability to feel that which we yearn to feel, which is that river, that river of living water, that just nourishes us all, and that we can participate in. We're given a opportunity to participate in that.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So he says, he concludes, he says, if someone wanders from the truth, not like that we're supposed to be like, well, I'm better than you and I know it all and you better listen to me and this is the rule, the law. This is the direction that we need to go, and so anyone who brings back a sinner, and there's another loaded word, sinner, but someone who is not on that has wandered away from the path of really what's right in front of God or righteousness. If someone wanders from that path, if we can be a part
Bringing
of
them back.
serving the Creator, yes,
Yeah.
and helping them to understand what they've forgotten or that they're missing, that so that they can be helped and experience real love and compassion, then that saves their soul from death, and we're blessed in that because we've got to experience the love of God and be a part of that, participant in that whole process of serving the Creator and what He wants to bring about,
Good
for all
stuff.
of us. Yeah.
Hey,
And
Michael, let me I don't want to cut you off at all because you're preaching. It's good. I'm with
oh,
you.
I'm sorry.
No, no,
I
no.
don't
No,
mean to be preaching.
I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean like I'm a
Okay.
supporter of your preaching. I just want
I
to
know.
make sure we get everybody else, but you
Oh
bring up
yeah, I
some
do too.
excellent points, and this idea of the root understanding of all this. So I really appreciate it. I just wanted to give you kind of a flag and say whenever you can wrap it, we'll move to the
Oh,
next person.
yes.
So
Immediately, I
no, no.
like I said, this is such a loaded subject. I might come back, raise my hand again if you're still.
Hey,
If,
please do. We'll probably be here for a little while unless somebody gets tired of listening and they just log off. But no, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to make sure we get everybody in. And
oh
so
yeah,
thank you for your
me
points.
too. Yes.
All right, brother. Well, stick around and raise your hand if you have something else to add. Thanks.
Shalom.
Shalom. All right. And Eric, how are you? Shabbat Shalom.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom to you, to all, and deeply educational study, particularly the as you put it, going from what was it, kin to neighbor to ger, from Ak to Rhea to ger. That sociological dialectic from you said, is it the particular to the general? And the dialectic is inverted between the kin and the neighbor. The kin as in your Ak, sometimes translated brother, and neighbor, Rhea, in Proverbs 17. 17, I brought it up before. It was, but it's common, but it's like, it's inverted. It's like all day could be translated, all day we love the neighbor, but brothers are born in adversity. And that seems to highlight the dialectic between neighbor and Ak, or Rhea and Ak, as in the early lessons that we share, as Clody mentioned about, or early lessons that we learn, sharing, because siblings got to share, right? I mean, they have to learn how to share resources, so just to that early lesson, as just kind of that thing, Leviticus 19:18 inverted a bit. All day we love the neighbor, but we, familiarity breeds contempt. It's
The what? I,
sometimes
I
we
missed that last part. I'm sorry. I missed the last little bit you said.
familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
We got to share. We got to share with our brothers or our kinfolk. That kind of like and hence the biblical theme between rivaling brothers.
Yeah.
Throughout Cain and Abel and Esau and Jacob. Because
Oh,
we
yeah.
got to share. Only one birthright. Too. All right. I mean,
Yep.
that's the other, but I'm just different. But that's a good study. I didn't, thinking it from the particular to the general. The dialectic is there in Proverbs 17:17 as well, between the kin and the neighbor.
Appreciate it. That's good
And as far
insight.
as
All right.
the care is, that's the sojourner, because you guys were sojourners in Egypt, right? So that's supposed to, supposed to sympathize with that.
Mm-hmm.
But not to. Thanks for the study. Peace,
Hey,
y'all. Love you.
thank you, Eric. Hang around. You may have something else to jump in. Just good stuff. Appreciate you.
Yeah, take it easy, man. Peace.
Thanks, brother. All right, peace. And Valentine, how's it going in the Galilee, my friend?
Oh, it's going okay. It's been exciting. I guess maybe you guys heard about that missile hitting the field over there.
Absolutely.
That was kind of weird because my wife and I were on the train. I'm supposed to get off like at just one stop before that. That was kind of bizarre. It was at that exact time. We were going to Tel Aviv. We're going back tomorrow. Hopefully it'll be without any kind of problems. But
right.
It's all over these passports. We got to go back to Tel Aviv to pick up these passports. And, we hadn't had to renew American passports in 10 years. Well, now's the time.
Yeah.
Well, but okay. So now here's what I was going to tell you about. Two little quick stories.
Okay.
One, when I was on the train the other day and I was coming back, I got this phone call from a doctor's office, and I really wanted to talk to them about this, but I was on the train and I thought, well, okay, but I need to talk to him. So I'll talk to him. Well, just then this guy comes in, these two guys come in, this big black fellow, and he comes in, he's got long braids and stuff like that. And what he looks like doesn't make any difference. I'm just giving you a visual on this. Well, anyway, and I'm on the phone. And so he starts pronouncing all these scriptures and stuff like that. So I look, and he's standing right in front of me, not looking at me, but he's standing in front of me, facing everybody else in the car.
Yeah.
So I said, "Check it." Now, if you don't know this term, okay, it's like check it. It means like,
be quiet.
Hey,
shut up.
Give me a minute here.
Yeah.
Because I'm on the phone with my doctor, and he looks at me like, this is important what I'm doing. I'm like, this is important what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah.
So go over there and talk to him, And I figured everything was cool because yeah. So I figured that this is not a nasty thing, people. Okay, just so you know that if you come to Israel, be like, give me a second, hold on. Okay, there we go. All right. So anyway, but that was so funny because I got to hear a term I haven't heard before, and that was interesting. It's Ivri Shacher, so it's like this a black Hebrew. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Apparently it's popular in America, but I hadn't been in America in 10 years, so I don't know. But anyway, it was very impressive. Was
he giving these verses in English or in Hebrew?
No, it was all in Hebrew.
Okay.
And this other guy was standing there with his arms crossed at the entrance. Well, when people take that stance in a train in Tel Aviv, I'm looking over there at the soldier sitting right across from me. He doesn't seem to be alerted, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
And but this other guy's like nodding and agreeing with him. They came in together. I'm like, all right, so get on out, go over there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but what I wanted to point out with this, okay, is not that this guy was a bad guy or did anything wrong. People say whatever they want to say. Yeah. But that's the point. In Israel, people are very argumentative. Nobody gets along that great all the time. Sometimes things get heated a little bit, not always, but sometimes. But here's the great thing about it with love your neighbor and love your neighbor as yourself even, is that when you finish talking, you give your idea or your 2 or 3 ideas, and then you're listening and everybody's okay.
Yeah.
You don't get all bent out of shape and upset. You're not letting your blood pressure go up, 5 hours later. It's over. It's done. You might even have coffee with them. I don't smoke, but they'll smoke a cigarette and offer one. But that's just what it is. And I wanted to say that because sometimes people get an idea of like, well, it's easy to love people. It's not easy to love people. Matter of fact, people here in Israel make it kind of difficult at times to love them, but it's okay.
Right.
It's going to be all right. So those, I think, were the 2 things. Oh yeah. Okay, here's one more. So something I've said for years and years. I even put it in one of the poems in my books. It's this kosher thing. Now, I know you weren't talking about kosher, but you'll get what I'm saying in a second.
Yeah.
I've always said, if people put more time into love your neighbor as you do yourself, as they do to kosher laws here in Israel, it'd be a finer, better place for everybody. I don't know.
Amen.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be sitting at a coffee place and these 2 yeshiva guys, and I'm not complaining. They did me a service. They're helping me, right? I actually thought the place was kosher. I did. It's not very far from here. I walked there. I'm sitting there. Not anymore, but I was sitting there that day, and they come up, Sadiq. It means righteous one. Now, anytime that 2 yeshiva students tell you that, and they start the conversation with that, somebody's in trouble, okay?
Yeah.
So anyway, Sadiq, yes, kosher. I was like, I told him, is it kosher? I'm like, I'm just having coffee, right? So I'm like, yeah, I think it is. I hope so now at this point, right? So, but turns out it wasn't. And they were doing me a favor, and they helped me. So I haven't been back to the place. Really great coffee, but it's interesting because this whole kosher, and I just think, why don't we use a lot of this energy for loving each other, helping? The people will help you. They will help you. They'll go out of their way to help you. So that's not a complaint. But love each other, be kind to each other, supportive. We'll be all right. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Valentine, that is the material that forms a great lesson. I think you could preach that, as we say. Anywhere, whether in Israel or in the United States, if we put as much focus on loving our neighbor as the minutia that we get into in other categories, what would this world be like? And you've given me some food for thought, as we say. I really appreciate that. I think it's great.
Good deal.
You're by the way, you and your family, and I have other friends that live in Israel, as many of people on this panel also. But you're also in our prayers. And when you sent me that message about the incident on the train, just knowing that someone I actually know is there, it really brings us closer to the situation. It gives us something to pray about. Very specifically, lets us focus on particular people. So I keep you and your wife in my prayers, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I see our friend James Tabor over there.
He is. Yeah, I see him sneaking in there.
Guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you for having me on here, and let me say that, and I appreciate your prayers. Thank you for your prayers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, and appreciate your good thoughts. Have a beautiful evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Todd and Angel, how are you, my friends? I got you unmuted, but I don't hear you. I don't hear you. I hear something.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now. There it is.
What happened?
I don't know.
Unplug the microphone.
That'll do it.
She unplugs the microphone, but you can hear us.
I got you now.
Computer has a microphone.
Good deal. What's going on, guys?
You can see us too.
Yeah.
I have a different take on this love your neighbor thing.
All right, I'm ready.
What about coworkers?
Yeah, that's not your neighbor.
Neighbors?
They don't, unless they live next door to you, Todd. That doesn't count.
Well, but you're around them a lot, though.
No, I think it does actually. I remember I go pretty broad with my definition of neighbor, but I'm interested. What do you think? In other words, you may have some coworkers that aren't easy to love. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I would never say that.
Uh-huh.
Never. No, no, God forbid.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious because I don't diss anybody at work. I don't speak badly of them. I'll speak the truth, but I won't speak badly of them. But I guess it's like anywhere else you work. You have your little cliques.
Yeah.
Of course, where I'm at, I have the whole shop to myself.
Well, it's
So,
easy to love. It's easy to love the people in your shop that way then.
Well, yeah, because once they all leave in the mornings to go to the jobs or whatever, I'm there. I'm the one that makes all the stuff. So
Okay.
I work myself, but I still have to, in the mornings, you still see everybody. And there's a few guys that have been there with me for, gosh, years and years and years and years and years. And then you have the newer guys coming in who are all buddies with the superintendent because he's the one that hired all of them.
Mm.
Either I think majority of them are Guatemalan, a couple from Honduras or whatever. But like I was telling her, this is the first time in 22 years that I've worked there that I don't know the names of everybody.
Yeah.
And they're probably more than 2/3 of our workforce now.
Right.
And, I rarely ever say anything to them. I don't, if they say good morning, I'll say good morning back or something like that,
Right.
And I don't sit there and just, whatever at them, but
Yeah.
I don't make an effort to talk to them either because I know the type of people. When you have your little clique, well, you know how it is. I mean, you worked in factories and stuff like
I have.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know how it is. And so like I said, I present myself as an easygoing person, but I don't extend myself to make it known like that to those that I just really just care if they know it or not.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I don't disrespect them.
Right. I think would you agree that it's almost as if the rule is that we don't have to go overboard but in our interactions, when you do interact with these people, that you treat them with loving kindness. I mean, you're not going to be, like you said, you're not growling at them. You're not being ugly to them. You don't necessarily have to play cards with them after work. That's not, I don't think that's what it's saying. But I do think that we can be pleasant. I tell you, when I live in a small town and it really is interesting to see how someone's whole visage will change when you just greet them, because I think sometimes we don't even take the time to say hello to someone, Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that if you say hello to someone, that means you love your neighbor I'm just saying, I think that a lot of times it's the very simplest interactions with people that make a big difference,
Mm-hmm.
Those guys that you're talking about that aren't necessarily your very close companions, they might say, when I go in that shop, that guy Todd, he's a decent guy. He says hello, and sometimes I think that's enough. And we have different levels of how well do you get to know someone.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it, though. Just be a nice person.
Some people are easier to love from a distance.
I agree. Yeah, it is a lot easier to love some people. And some people just almost refuse to allow you to be that loving neighbor, so to speak. I happen to know situations in my own life where that's happened. So
yeah, that's basically the owner of the company right there.
Yeah.
He's one of those kind of guys. I'll say hi to him. I'm always first one there. And when he does eventually get in there, he unlocks everything. I'll say hi to him. He just walks on back and goes back in the office.
Yeah.
I'm like, did my part, buddy.
Yeah.
Don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes, one thing that I try to do, not that I'm perfect at it, because sometimes when somebody's just kind of smug or mean, sometimes I just think, that guy's a a horrible person or he's a jerk or whatever. But, a lot of people are carrying some really heavy burdens, and I think that can come in too if we try to give a person. I'm not saying I do this perfectly, but try to give somebody the benefit and think, maybe they're going through a really bad time. I don't know. Maybe that's what this guy needs is, I don't know, just a continuance of somebody that says hello, even when he doesn't say hello back. Never know.
Well, having a narcissist personality doesn't help a lot either.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help. That's true.
Doesn't help for nothing. But he's always stressed out because of. Let's put it this way. He
tries to micromanage everything.
Well, but he owns the company, but he's never swung a hammer.
Gotcha.
That tells you anything.
I know exactly the type. I know what you're saying.
So he's always, he'll come out there and bring me some jobs or something that's going to have to be done, and then he'll start like, oh man, you just don't realize how hard it is to do this and to run this thing and everything. And I told him, I said, dude, one thing I learned from the place I used to work at from the owner is that 99.9% of your problems when it comes to running a business was created by you.
Yeah.
And I said, until you learn that, I'm telling the owner this because he just bought the place like 2 years ago. And I told him, I said, until you learn this and understand this, you're going to stay stressed.
Mm-hmm.
If you would just nip stuff in the bud like Barney Fife would, you wouldn't have all these problems.
Yeah. Some people don't like to hear the truth, though, do they?
No, but I am full of it when it comes to that place. I'm not going to lie to you. If you ask me about what I think about something, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
Because I'm the oldest employee there, and I'm 2 steps away from wearing coveralls to go with this beard. So I'll say whatever I feel like.
They say it's all in the delivery. Look, we're going to say goodbye to our wonderful folks on YouTube. So don't go anywhere, you guys on Zoom. If you're part of the Yachad, thank you for all your support, and jump on over to the Zoom call. We don't want you to miss anything. So Shabbat Shalom to our YouTube crowd, and the rest of you hang tight.